Both of you have been associated with school systems. I would like to ask you about the process and practices of including neurodiverse children and young people in a mainstream education system. In my experience, I have always found that the discussion of how to meet the needs of students with learning differences often begins with whether students with neurodevelopmental conditions should be included in typical classrooms or be given separate learning environments. There is a growing trend towards all children having the right to mainstream settings if the families choose so. The neurodiversity advocates often say that the concept of a neurodiversity embodies a strength-based model. Could you please throw some light on this for us, Michael?
Sure, Manavina, happy to. You've got slides there. I wonder if you just want to move to the first slide so that anyone watching this might be able to just pick up the key points I just want to share. A strength-based model is something that we talk a lot about. I mean, as you can see from my appearance, I've been around for a long, long time, and the strength-based model, I think it's something that the best teachers have always done really well, even before we'd ever heard of the term, neurodiverse, or it's what the best teachers have been doing, and in the UK we talk about quality first teaching, and this is sort of embodied in that approach. I mean, in a nutshell, it's about focusing on abilities and strength. So, if we take the term disability, which is a well-known descriptor, for rightly or wrongly, but if we focus on the dis in disability, children will only notice the differences, the difficulties that they have, the barriers that they have, and that creates frustration. So that's when things get really difficult for these young people in our classrooms, and then the staff get frustrated, and it's all a downward spiral. So it's this about focusing on abilities, and because then children will notice suddenly what they can do, and isn't that an amazing thing? We can all do. We're all good at something, aren't we? We've all got a thing, and we know that neurodivergent children typically, I must say typically, not all of them, because even within that term neurodivergent, there's a huge range and lots of uniqueness, but neurodivergent children typically do well in more creative subjects. And we also know that children with autism, for instance, focus on detail and pattern. So it's down to us, I think, as educators, to help them understand that. Because a lot of them have felt like failures from the moment they've gone into school. The other children might have said things to them, and their teachers might have inadvertently given them messages about their failings and their weaknesses. So it's about focusing on their abilities. What can you do? Children, well, I found, have an amazing ability to know what they're good at, and they can also tell you what support they need. And I think, from my experience, we say that we listen to children, but I think sometimes we don't ask them the right question. So whenever I go into schools and I'm young people, I will always ask them, what could teachers do more of to help you? What could they do less of in order to help you? What can they change? Because we talk about trying to change children. Actually, it's us adults that need to change. So we need to ask them what we can do differently to support developing their strengths and their abilities. A little while ago, it was just an accident, really, a happy accident. I was sat down having lunch in a secondary school with a group, and I said to one girl, I said, what can your teachers do to help you? And she said, more group work. I thought, wow, that's fantastic. So I took that back to the school leaders, and it was obvious that they had never asked that question of their students. That was probably the first time ever she'd had a chance to say, I will do better with more group work. And 3 months later, I contacted the school again, I was to the staff, and they said, yes, the teachers have implemented more group work. And as a result of that, children are making better progress or engagement. So that's not a difficult thing, is it, for teachers to put into practice in our schools? So ask them, how things are going, how we can do things differently, how we can do things better to help them. It also needs to be an ongoing dialogue as well. I know that schools will say, oh, yeah, pupil voice, yeah, we do a survey once a year. That's not enough. This needs to be something that's happening on a daily basis, lesson by lesson, day by day. It's that ongoing dialogue. And it's all about relationships, isn't it? If we've got really good relationships with children, we would naturally be having the conversations with them. How's it going? How can we help you more? Me as a teacher, what do I need to do less of? Do I talk to you too much? Do I not involve you with your peers as much as I should? These sort of things. So let's, have that ongoing dialogue. The final point on my slide is assess, plan, do, and review. Now, a lot of you will have come across that. And in the UK, Caroline is nodding. I can see it's quite a well-established process. I won't say it's always done well in schools, but it is an established process. So if I talk to a Senko in a school and mention assess, plan, do, review, they will know exactly what I mean, and they can usually show evidence or things that they've done to support that. So, assess, gather the information from a wide range of sources about the child, and especially the child, of course. Don't them out. And they do get missed out, in my experience. They'll talk to parents sometimes, but it's usually teachers that have the big say in, building up that picture. So get a range of support. We want a holistic approach. We need a holistic picture of the child, because we're talking strengths and abilities, aren't we? We need to know, exactly what those strengths and abilities are. They're not always obvious. I've known children for a long time, and you don't know what they do after school or at home. They might have won certificates and medals for all sorts of things, and we don't know it because they struggle in our class. So make sure that we get that holistic picture. The plan, again, speak to the child. What do they think? What strategies do they think should be in the plan? What do they think is going to make them successful? Also, find some research-based strategies as well. There's a lot of publication now that give good advice on strategies that are working. So make sure you do that as well. To do, it sounds obvious to implement the plan, but we have to stick to it. A lot of plans fall down not because of the content, but because they're just not carried out. So if the plan says for a young person to have 3 sessions per week in terms of a communication interaction session with their peers, it's got to happen 3 times a week. What can happen is it comes to the end of the week and people will start scratching their heads and thinking, oh dear me, we didn't do those 3 sessions, or we didn't do this, or I didn't provide something in bigger script, or all these things can go by the wayside. So stick to it. And then the final part of that process is the review, of course. And again, gain feedback first from the child. How do you think your week's gone? How do you think those lessons went? What would have made it, better or easier? Or did you get a chance to communicate in a way that suits you? There's lots to think about that, but I'll stop. I'll pause at that point now.